Most people over 50 spend between 2 and 4 hours per day on social media and digital entertainment platforms. That is 700 to 1,400 hours per year, 7,000 to 14,000 hours per decade. That is more time than most people spend exercising, in nature, or engaging in novel learning, practicing gratitude, or doing any of the other cognitively protective activities we've discussed in this channel, combined. The question is not whether to use digital platforms. They are embedded in modern life in ways that are largely non-negotiable. The question is whether the specific patterns of digital use most adults have settled into are helping or harming their aging brain. And the research from Stanford's Social Media Lab and from multiple independent neuroscience groups has produced a clear and somewhat alarming answer. Passive social media scrolling produces a neurological state that research characterizes as the opposite of what the aging brain needs. Dopamine receptor downregulation from the variable reward schedule, attention fragmentation from the rapid content switching that scroll design enforces, cortisol elevation from social comparison content, and the activation of the social threat detection system. This produces chronic low-grade social anxiety with no resolution pathway in a context of thousands of social comparisons per hour. But the same research also identifies specific patterns of digital use that produce genuine cognitive benefits. The harmful effects are from specific behavioral patterns enabled by digital design, and those behavioral patterns can be changed. By the end of this video, you will have an evidence-based framework for distinguishing cognitive drain digital use from cognitive benefit digital use, and a specific protocol for shifting your digital time toward patterns that support rather than accelerate cognitive aging. Let's establish the specific neurological mechanisms through which passive social media scrolling produces cognitive harm, particularly for adults over 50. The first mechanism is dopamine system disruption through variable reward schedules. Social media feeds are algorithmically designed to exploit the same neurological mechanism that makes slot machines addictive, the variable reward schedule. Unpredictable rewards, an interesting post, a social interaction, or nothing of value, produce higher dopamine activation and more compulsive engagement than predictable rewards. The specific neurological consequence of prolonged exposure to variable reward schedules is dopamine receptor downregulation, the same mechanism that drives addiction. When dopamine receptors are repeatedly activated at high frequency, the brain reduces their density and sensitivity as a homeostatic response. The result is that activities which previously produced adequate dopamine activation, genuine human connection, meaningful engagement, become less satisfying. More stimulation is required to produce equivalent satisfaction. The threshold for engagement rises. For adults over 50, whose dopamine system is already experiencing age-related decline, this represents an additional impairment of an already challenged system. The motivation, cognitive drive, and reward sensitivity that aging is already reducing are further compromised by the dopaminergic disruption of passive scrolling. The second mechanism is attention fragmentation. The average time between content items in a social media feed is approximately 3 to 5 seconds. This extremely rapid content switching trains the attentional system toward frequent switching, habituating the brain to the pattern of brief engagement. Research has found that adults with high social media use show measurably reduced sustained attention capacity compared to low social media users. The brain adapts to the attentional patterns it practices most frequently. Sustained focus is essential for novel learning and deep reading. Adults who have fragmented their attentional capacity find cognitively enriching activities increasingly difficult because the attentional muscle has been chronically undertrained. The third mechanism is social comparison activation. Social media content is systematically biased toward the positive and impressive. The result is a comparison environment that bears no resemblance to actual human experience, yet the brain processes it as a realistic sample. Brief social media use consistently elevates indicators of social comparison in ways that produce cortisol elevation and reduced self-esteem. For adults over 50, navigating the genuine challenges of aging, This activation is a consistent cortisol driver that undermines well-being. Understanding these mechanisms is the first step toward reclaiming cognitive health and biological balance in the digital age. The neurological effects of passive social media use are harmful at any age, but they are specifically more harmful for adults over 50, for reasons that connect directly to the biology we've been addressing. The first vulnerability is the declining dopamine system. Age-related reductions in dopamine receptor density make the aging brain more sensitive. This makes the brain more sensitive to the dopamine receptor downregulation that variable reward schedules from social media produce. A dopamine system with reduced capacity is less resilient, meaning passive scrolling produces greater impairment in older adults than younger ones. The second vulnerability is the declining attention system. Reductions in sustained attention capacity and working memory mean that fragmentation depletes a smaller reserve. The same degree of attentional fragmentation that creates mild inconvenience in a young adult creates meaningful functional impairment in an adult over 50. The third vulnerability is the social comparison response. Research has found that social comparison sensitivity varies across the adult lifespan. Those navigating identity challenges, retirement, health changes, or role shifts are particularly sensitive to content representing peers as thriving where aging produces loss. The fourth vulnerability is the opportunity cost. Adults over 50 have fewer discretionary hours per day than younger adults due to recovery needs. Hours spent scrolling are hours not spent in cognitively protective activities like novel learning, genuine social connection, or nature exposure. The opportunity cost of passive scrolling is higher for older adults because their protective activity time is more limited and more precious. Research on digital use and cognitive health identifies one distinction as the most important variable: active, meaningful digital use versus passive, consumptive, comparison-driven use. Digital use that protects cognitive health includes active communication, like video calls and messages, with individuals with whom you have genuine existing relationships. This produces positive social neurobiology, such as oxytocin activation and cortisol reduction, comparable to the benefits of in-person contact. Creating and sharing content related to genuine expertise, producing rather than consuming, activates prefrontal and memory systems in cognitively beneficial ways. Learning-focused use, like online courses and skill development, requires effortful cognitive engagement that produces neuroplasticity benefits similar to non-digital learning. Community engagement in groups centered on shared interests produces social belonging, rather than the social comparison triggered by passive feed scrolling. Conversely, digital use that harms cognitive health is characterized by passive feed scrolling, variable reward seeking, and rapid content switching. Infinite scroll platforms provide no natural stopping point, preventing the closure that allows our attentional systems to reset and recover. Research shows this format impairs attention regulation. Furthermore, algorithmic outrage and anxiety content produce cortisol elevation, which accelerates cognitive aging. By choosing active engagement over passive consumption, we can protect our brain health and harness technology for long-term cognitive well-being. The Digital Nutrition Protocol, treating digital content as a nutritional input to the brain rather than a neutral or inconsequential background activity, establishes specific guidelines for digital use that maximize cognitive benefit while minimizing cognitive cost. The 4 rules of digital nutrition. Rule 1. Active over passive. Every hour of digital time should be audited for the ratio of active engagement to passive consumption. Active engagement, creating, communicating, learning, contributing, should represent the majority of digital time. Passive scrolling, consuming feed content with no active engagement requirement, should represent the minimum. Practical implementation. Before opening any social media app, identify the specific active purpose. Communicating with a specific person. Sharing content related to a genuine interest. Learning something specific. If no active purpose can be identified, the opening is passive consumption, and should be delayed or redirected. Rule 2. Time-boxed rather than open-ended. The infinite scroll format removes natural stopping cues, making it easy for sessions to extend. Research has found that setting specific time limits for passive social media use and enforcing those limits through app timers significantly reduces attentional fragmentation. Practical implementation. Set app time limits for passive consumption platforms, 15 to 30 minutes per day maximum. Rule 3. Social media as communication tool rather than entertainment medium. The cognitive harm of social media is concentrated in its use as an entertainment medium. Passive consumption of algorithmically curated content for stimulation. Restructuring your social media use toward messaging, calling, and direct engagement shifts the neurological balance from harm to benefit. Rule 4. Digital-free zones for highest priority activities. The most cognitively important activities should occur in digital-free conditions. Practical implementation. Establish specific digital-free times and spaces. The first 90 minutes after waking, during the morning protocol, meal times with family or friends, the pre-sleep wind-down period, and, as we've established, the bedroom itself. Digital nutrition connects to the complete brain health system through every mechanism that digital use affects, and the list is long. Digital use and attention. The attentional fragmentation of passive scrolling directly undermines the sustained attention capacity that novel learning requires, that the Ultra-D and performance protocol supports, and that deep social engagement demands. Reducing passive scrolling preserves the attentional foundation that every other cognitively enriching activity requires. Digital use and cortisol. The social comparison and outrage content of passive feed consumption is a consistent cortisol driver for adults over 50. The ashwagandha, gratitude, and breathing protocols reduce cortisol from multiple sources. Reducing passive scrolling removes a daily cortisol source, amplifying the effectiveness of every cortisol management intervention. Digital use and dopamine. Active learning, exercise, social connection, and nature exposure all support healthy dopamine signaling. Passive scrolling's variable reward-driven dopamine downregulation undermines the reward sensitivity that makes these activities genuinely rewarding. Protecting the dopamine system preserves the motivational biology that sustains engagement with cognitively protective activities, digital use, and social connection. Passive consumption produces the appearance of social connection without the neurobiological substance. Active digital communication with specific individuals provides genuine social connection through digital medium. The digital nutrition protocol preserves the social connection benefit while eliminating the social comparison harm. Here is your specific action plan. Audit your social media use for 1 day, tracking total time and the ratio of active communication. Set a 30-minute daily limit on passive platforms using screen time tools. Before opening any app, identify your specific active purpose. Next week on Neuro Vitality After 50, we explore the impact of skin health, UV exposure, and vitamin D on brain health. Research shows the skin is an endocrine organ producing neurologically active compounds that affect brain health through unknown pathways. Subscribe now and share this with someone who needs a brain health upgrade. Thank you for being here. Stay sharp, stay vital.